life event. It feels really great, and even speaking to some of you guys earlier, and you know, it's so inspiring to have that energy. I've done a lot of virtual events over the past 16 months. We were talking about it. But I think nothing beats being in person, particularly with what we're going to talk about today. So what I want to focus this talk on, and I'll keep it kind of really informal, maybe the first 10 to 15 minutes, then open up for questions, is really about purpose-driven and business for good, something that I'm so passionate about. I'll talk a bit about my experience, then I'll also talk about the current startup that I work at, and a few other case studies of kind of local business who are kind of driving change. So yeah, I hope it will be informative. I've got a worksheet after that I'll send round with loads of great kind of networks, everything from, you know, a rise of massive kind of funding firms, sorry, that are really now kind of looking to kind of grassroots community businesses, to Slack channels to find like-minded individuals. I really hope I can offer some kind of practical resource to that. But yeah, as I said, I'm an open book, so any questions after this or pull me after, I'm very happy to answer. So I think I'd like to probably start with a bit of hope. There's a lot of doom and gloom right now. You know, if we look at kind of the climate crisis, social injustice, so many inequalities, but I think there's a lot of hope in how we see businesses tackling those issues. You know, whether it's kind of grassroots in the community or the bigger companies top down. With that being said, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to good business. I'm sure you can all recognise all the adverts that are on TV at the moment of every kind of massive corporate saying they're going to solve climate change, social inequality. And I think it can really leave people thinking, well, where and how do I even begin? Which is really how I kind of started out. So the only New Year's resolution I've ever stuck to was in 2017 when I decided to quit fast fashion. So I noticed that I was just over-consuming like crazy. I was working at a time for a massive fast-moving consumer goods company, which essentially is a massive corporate that owns loads of businesses with, you know, growth and sales as the key attribute. So I found myself kind of there, my day-to-day, forcing people to buy more plastic and crap and whatnot. You know, if I was there for so long that the next year a new product would be out and the old product that I pitched last year, and so on, part of this vicious cycle. And then my day-to-day as well, you know, I'd get my salary in, pay off my student loan, and then I'd hit up Zara and Topshop. And that was my void that I was kind of filling. And the fact that I always felt that my passion in terms of pursuing like purpose and my action kind of on the side, almost as like an extracurricular, right? As an adult, I never thought it was something that I could profit on. So when I set up my business model before, it was called The Closet. It was all about tackling, you know, the massive issue with the fact that no students seem to be shopping kind of second-hand, and the fact that we're all broke and student loans can afford to get fast fashion parcels delivered to us every now and again, and nobody was really talking about that. So I set up a shop to kind of challenge the notions of what it means to shop second-hand. But at the time, I was like, oh, do you know what? It's a purpose-driven business. I can't begin to profit on that. So as we were graduating and my friends around me were frantically applying to jobs and whatnot, I was like, let me jump on this hype, and hence how I came to work at an FMCG. But yeah, as I was there and as I was saying, I became so disillusioned, and I took a step back and I thought, oh my goodness, like this is spiraling out of control now. So my New Year's resolution was to not buy any new fast fashion. So I naively thought you could simply Google, how do I be more sustainable? And this is back in 2015, so not that long ago, but at the time was a very different landscape, which again gives a lot of hope for how much has shifted in 5 years. Times I was like, right, I'm just going to Google, how do I be more sustainable? And like this amazing list of like brands is going to come up and they're going to tell me like what I need to do. Obviously, I was naive to do that, and as I Googled and found out there's nothing out there, I need to define for myself what sustainability means, and I need to do a lot of research to find out, now that I know my values and how I guide my sustainability and what I look for in a good business, to these businesses that I was finding. So there wasn't much out there, so hence I set up a platform called Sustainable Hustle at the time. The name has since changed, and it was called Forever Wanting More Than Hemp Trousers, How to Find Sustainable Fashion Without Breaking the Bank. So there I began a platform where I decided to talk about all these businesses that I was finding. And it was amazing because at the time, like again, only 5 years ago, there weren't many people there. So when I was engaging, and not even purchasing, but engaging, I just was brought into this amazing, supportive, open, transparent community of businesses, and then an opportunity came up, and probably the best thing that happened to me, and I was made redundant from the fast-moving consumer goods company, which came at a time where, you know, sad at the time, but actually was the kick that I needed. I would have stayed in that rut. So there I looked to kind of pursue what I was doing in the sustainable fashion front, and I realised at the time, as I was connecting with these amazing brands, that none of them knew what they were doing to communicate all this amazing effort. They didn't have the capacity, they didn't have the budget, so I started working with a lot of those businesses, translating all the kind of marketing, sales work I'd done before in the world of plastic fantastic to these amazing businesses. And along the way, I became really passionate about social enterprise and putting purpose before profit. The two can still go together. We don't need to sacrifice profit. People are allowed to get paid, and allowed to make money, and allowed to be successful, but it's how the two intersect together. I then became really involved with the All-Parliamentary Group for Fashion and Textiles, which is where a lot of my frustration grew in the industry, and hence why I get onto what I do today. I was really hopeful with the All-Parliamentary Group for Fashion and Textiles in terms of how legislation from the top-down government could change some of the issues we were seeing in the fashion industry. Everything from taking away taxes when you go get clothes repaired to encourage people to get clothes repaired as opposed to it being the same price to get the said item again from H&M, to making companies such as the big fast fashion giants like Boohoo, Pretty Little Thing, have to publish all of their garment workers' history on their website. So everything from the supply chain right down to the people who are on their shop floor here in the UK. And I was in that group for a long time, and I was full of amazing, passionate people, but nothing was ever going through. The fashion industry in the UK is worth £32 billion. The fishing industry, for example, I think is like a few million, but yet like people are obsessed, and that was being debated because nobody really saw the fashion industry as something of interest and something that was a global and socio-economic issue right on our doorstep, but also more globally. So from there, I kind of started to look at what I was doing and thought, fashion kind of isn't really enough, and this isn't really accessible. And at that time, there were a lot of people starting to talk about sustainable fashion, but it became this kind of like echo chamber of you need to buy an £120 organic white cotton t-shirt or shot from Stella McCartney and sacrifice X, Y, and Z, and it became this kind of consumption thing again. And I became frustrated at the fact that, you know, if we want to change the system, it has to be accessible in so many ways. So along came a little tech startup called CoGo, short for Connecting Good. And CoGo was born out of the idea that, sadly, and though important, and we will still push and we will still protest, legislation does not change overnight, unfortunately. So what can we do as businesses and consumers to remodel the system? So CoGo is an app that essentially takes 120 accreditations and puts them into 12 easy badges. And it's born out of the idea that people want to be sustainable, but they don't know where to begin. On the other hand, all these amazing businesses who are doing great things can't communicate what they're doing and aren't getting the recognition and consumer purchasing power they deserve. So our ambition is to connect that and create that remodeling, to truly bring the idea of voting with your money to life. So we take 120 accreditations and we put them into 12 easy badges. We then accredit businesses. We invite businesses to start with one badge because we understand that no business is going to be 100% sustainable or a good business. We also understand on the consumer side that what you care about doesn't naturally translate to everybody else. You may really care about living wage, you may really care about social enterprise, and that's okay. And that's really where we need to meet people in this conversation where they are as a starter. So yeah, it's been a very interesting 3 years. We started off, it was a Kiwi company, which I think is probably really interesting to this conversation. New Zealand, in terms of how their society kind of navigates business and day to day, was super insightful. So we started off a very, very small team of 3 people in the UK. We had 5 developers back in New Zealand, so a very interesting time zone that still continues today. And we were frantically part of this amazing startup community with a few others on the kind of the first wave. I mean, it's always been there. There's been people in the business who have been fighting the good fight for years, who were really trying to push sustainability in an accessible way. We came at an interesting time. We had Extinction Rebellion at the forefront. A lot of our team are quite involved in that. However, we choose to kind of separate, again, going back to the balance of access when we kind of talk about some of the biggest issues that are facing us right now. And we've also got, team members who have been at the UN, who have worked for the New Zealand Treasury. So we have since evolved from then, and our ambition now, we've got 20,000 businesses listed on the app. We're really passionate at the moment in terms of our focus is making sure, very relevant for this conversation, that people have the ability to support independence and community-focused businesses as well. So that is our big focus. In addition to that, we also have a feature that allows people to track their real-time carbon footprint. We think at the moment one of the biggest issues we want to start with is the climate conversation. It is being talked at great detail, but nobody knows what on earth is happening and how they can have impact. So that's where we're starting, and our ambition, in 10 years' time is for everybody to be able to download CoGo, select what values matter to them, and be matched with those said businesses. At the moment, we've started kind of at product level, so everything from kind of organics right down to, what's another good example, my mind's gone blank, reducing waste, for example, plastic free, and then on the other side, you've got the kind of services people part of the community, which we want to build further, so that's social enterprise, living wage, and so on. So that is CoGo. I think what I can kind of talk about now is navigating purpose in business. So we spend a lot of time at CoGo making sure that we are true to our purpose in whatever we do. We've got a massive, massive ambition to reach scale. The only way our proposition will work in terms of remodeling the system and to have impact in our communities is if we attract the masses on board to do that. So we really have to negotiate as we grow how we stay true to that core and the conversations and sacrifices we make. For example, in a situation, who would we work with? It may not potentially be seen as a good business, quote unquote good business, but can provide us access to loads of people who would otherwise not enter into that conversation. So I think I really encourage, no matter who you are, whether you're a small business owner, an individual in an organisation, or just kind of as yourself day to day or thinking about starting with a business, to find out what that purpose is to start with. A really good example is a good friend of mine who is a real kind of community business advocate called Charlie Blair, and she set up something called the Blair Academy. And it's really interesting what she's doing too in terms of in the dance realm. So she has a dance academy that aims to stop isolation and loneliness through dance. And I think it's a really interesting case study to think about in terms of purpose. Dance, obviously, is really great. Dance classes in our community, kids, siblings, whatever, kind of may go there, adult dance classes, but we don't really think about isolation and loneliness, and she's connected that through there as a medium. And that is her main goal, and that is what guides her. And I think that is really exciting and shows the possibility of setting up businesses that have other things at their core and translating that. So I think some of my kind of key advice that I would give is that being a good business, being sustainable doesn't happen overnight. It's also personal to you. Start doing one thing well and communicate that and find your community to help you further that on. I think that is the most exciting part, and I think so current in this room tonight and this conversation, that there is so many amazing people out there who want to support and want to back small businesses, but it's finding those forums and allowing small businesses to have the amplification that they deserve against the others who have massive marketing budgets and whatnot and everything else in between. So for example, if you're a food business, one of the key things we say is, what do you really care about? If you're kind of a food business in the community, is it food waste, or perhaps you're really passionate about the fact that in hospitality there's a huge issue with people being paid unfairly, and the London living wage is a really important part of that. So what do you want to focus on that? If it's living wage, why not engage with the Living Wage Foundation, become accredited, talk about that, promote that, talk about that to your customers, and then talk about that to other businesses in the community as well and promote that as the norm. Maybe it's something like food waste that you want to tackle. And it could be as easy as creating that kind of intervention kind of as your customers come in, or you might want to join an organisation such as the Sustainable Restaurant Association, who help you to look into ways and areas that you can measure reducing food waste. And that is our big next step for CoGo and what I'm working on, because we feel that there is so much information out there and we want small businesses to be a part of this movement, because that is so crucial to creating that change and showing those big businesses the lessons can be learned from doing that. So we've created something called the Good Impact Framework, which is a free resource that we are going to be rolling out that allows businesses to navigate and choose that. It's still very much a journey. We are still very much evolving in what we do, and are open to feedback and are open to criticism and welcome that. But I'm excited, and we're excited to be working on something that we think can truly create that access and pragmatic change. So that's everything from me, a kind of whistle-stop tour of like my past, what I'm doing at CoGo. But essentially, I think I'd like to end with the fact that I think there is a lot of hope working with so many amazing kind of businesses day to day, from local coffee shops in the area right up to kind of tech solutions that are trying to mobilize kind of mental health by creating a bot in WhatsApp, for example. All these wild ideas, but are so important to the challenges facing society, that there is a lot out there, and business has the power to remodel the system. Again, legislation is still needed, but it's that shifting in the system that I think is kind of really inspiring as we look ahead. So any questions? We're obviously a tech company, so all of our work, right, is how we use tech to ease this conversation, to create this access. However, the one part that will never be replaced by tech is our accreditation, right? Like, that can never be possible. So we have an in-house accreditation team. Some stuff is like pretty simple. You're either signed up to the Living Wage Foundation or you're not. Other stuff is more complex. For example, if we were to look at your business and food waste, it's completely individual to the said business. So there we'd have the conversation, we call up, where it's a small business, we really try and work with them there. There's a few kind of accreditations coming through, but one of the biggest challenges, and hence why I wanted to go to CoGo, is because a lot of small businesses are doing great things, but they often can't afford the accreditations, right, which is a real barrier to entry. So that is how we accredit businesses. You start with one badge on the app. Obviously, it's great if you have more, and we also get people, which I think is really important when we think about navigating what we do, talk to what they're doing in the future as well, and it has to be a tangible goal. So, for example, another badge that you hope to achieve in a year or two's time, and we want them to communicate that publicly. So CoGo uses something called open banking technology, which has been really interesting to explore. So basically, open banking was an EU legislation which meant that banks obviously own the right to all of our transaction data and can sell it on and do X, Y, and Z with it. The EU came along, I was still in it, in 2017 and said, hey, this is ridiculous. There's all this rich information about our spending. Most of us have the same bank accounts from when we're like teenagers and whatnot, and all these big milestones happen throughout our lives. So let's open it up to approved, Financial Conduct Authority approved third parties like ourselves. We have that authority to for consumers, if they wish to consent to use that said transaction data for good. So it's all encrypted and you can just see the vendor and so on. So there's some apps out there like Plum, for example, some people might be familiar with. And like when a coffee is £2.90, they take the 10p and they put it into a saving account for you. There's some really great kind of charity-led businesses who are approved in it. So that said 10p, you then donate to a chosen charity and so on. But to your point, it's been a real kind of challenge for us. And again, goes back to our purpose in terms of what we're really trying to do is shift that power, shift that consumer spend, show the movement, show the big corps that, hey, people are spending with said business because they're doing X. So a lot of what we're trying to do at the moment on the marketing front is really to kind of educate and get people comfortable in that and show the power of democratizing data. We're constantly doing interviews with our community, so we do 2 a week to make people aware of those challenges and understand as a business that we are part of the need to educate on that in terms of the security and the benefit of that technology. And from that that kind of community feedback, it's also about, okay, there's that apprehension there. We want to make sure that our product is accessible. So let's start to think about in the future actually how we allow people to use our technology without doing that part to get them comfortable, to ensure again that access is there. Councils are really interesting in community. So obviously we're a startup team ourselves, so there's only so many of us, but our ambition is like, we know, like, one of our biggest challenges at the moment is that if you were to open the app in Bermondsey, there might not be many businesses on there. I'm like, from Walthamstow, right, I open it up, I'm like, oh, I know this really amazing business that I go to like every day, and it's not on there just because, again, going back to your question in terms of like how we get as many businesses on as possible is no kind of easy task. So one of the routes we were looking to explore a while ago that we hope to pick up again is working with kind of councils and local communities, and starting, obviously we had to kind of launch for critical mass, so we kind of went to Living Wage and worked with them on like their businesses, but starting to be community focused. So that's one side of it. And then our Good Impact Framework will be a free resource that we give out. CoGo started as a charity and they still own a lot of the business, and we always want to remain true to that core. So that is a part of the business that we will never kind of commercialise on, and will be an open resource for community groups. And we're really making sure, and I should definitely send it to you, that all the wording in that is simple, digestible, doesn't leave people thinking, oh my goodness, where do I begin? Or like another thing I've got to pay for in the accreditation front.
Yeah. Because the reason I ask is because we sit on the Climate Emergency Partnership for Southern Council, and they're bringing out the report shortly, and all this sort of thing, I think if it's done right through a business network, we'll gain support, we'll be able to gain support from the council. So I was kind of thinking down the line, you know.
No,
if you can show that you're moving this direction, then obviously council, a lot of it's geared to supporting that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like we're expanding our team, and a lot of that is focused on that. So I'll definitely be reaching out if you're willing, and share that way, because we want to, as we grow and whatnot, we want to remain true to our core and have that balance there. We need the big businesses to be part of our app as well. They need to be communicating, they need to see what everybody else is doing, but we can't forget the power of that grassroots part. We started in London for critical mass, and then we went out to the UK. So in terms of at the moment, we haven't had like the opportunity to kind of go to the community. So that's the big step for us. We've got some great businesses. There's a lot happening in Liverpool, I would say. There's a big concentration there, and that's happened through working with the likes of Living Wage Foundation, for example. But that's our big next step. And something that we want to integrate into the app as well in the future, how if people walk past a business, like my example, they could be like, hang on a minute, like you should definitely be on CoGo, and that is the next step in terms of like how we make our tech that kind of open source and ensure that we can get businesses uploaded as quickly as possible.
And you would say that Liverpool is actually sort of more of an interesting community than sort of London at the moment?
No, so it's kind of come naturally for us in terms of like when we look at like our back end and we see like who from our community is there. And it's come about because we did a lot of work with the Living Wage Foundation. So when we first kind of launched into the UK, we worked with them. We got all of their businesses listed on our app with a Living Wage badge. Social Enterprise UK as well, we worked with them. Sustainable Restaurant Association. And there was just this massive kind of concentration, Manchester and Liverpool, interestingly, particularly in hospitality and living wage. So that's come from that, but to be honest, couldn't really be kind of guaranteed. It's just more from the social community side, that's where it seems to be. In terms of the first question, so that's like where a lot of our kind of debate comes from in terms of our accreditation and how far we push, right? In terms of our mission at the moment is access and for people to be involved and not feel disillusioned with the subject. So for example, one of the features we launched was a carbon footprint tracker. The best way to reduce your carbon footprint is cutting out red meat intake immediately or to become a vegan, but we're never going to say that, hey, like basically your carbon footprint's huge if you just become vegan overnight, like it will solve all your issues. It's not the answer, and that's not where we meet people. So a lot of that is constantly being negotiated. So for example, on our app at the moment, the steps to reduce your carbon footprint for your diet is reducing waste, vegetarian, pescatarian, and then adopting a vegan diet, that adopting being a key language. And that's what we're hiring for most at the moment. It's both our kind of devs to build the tech, and then also on the other side, our accreditation team as well, and ensuring that as the world and the industry changes, we're constantly checking ourselves and renewing that. So definitely a challenge. In terms of our business model, so this is a key thing for us when it comes back to small businesses and independents. We truly believe that, you know, they are the ones who are doing the most, not necessarily reaping the rewards for that, and thus should be on the CoGo app for free or next to nothing for their service. And we're still scaling at the moment, so we're still growing our community base. Obviously, the benefit of being listed on the app is that you get access to our community and that exposure. So we're completely negotiating that at the moment in terms of what that looks like, and we're inviting our kind of business community to feedback on that. We see the economic modelling as the kind of bigger businesses who will be listed on our app, who need to talk about what they're doing, who need to learn from these small businesses. That is where the weighting of the commercialisation comes from. So yeah, something we're trying to negotiate as, you know, a for-profit business ourselves, but remaining true to our core and ensuring that nobody's isolated. And it's that balance, it's always ongoing and always debated. That's why we went with like Living Wage Foundation and SRA, because they've got the data set, so we can immediately kind of pull that, give them a free profile. But it comes to a point like other smaller businesses who aren't part of that, and it takes time to do accreditation and get them on board, but we need them there, they're so important. And why, in terms of feedback from our community, why a lot of people download CoGo, so it needs to be there and we need to meet them there.
Elle, thank you so much for joining us and helping us kick off these events.
Yes,
back
indeed.
in Bermondsey together. I really appreciate all of us at Boundless, you joining us this evening and for helping us start thinking differently about our businesses, which I really appreciate. Boundless Thursdays, the point of doing these are to kind of connect great speakers, thinkers, business leaders and wonderful artists. So if we could also just join around the applause, welcome Zara to the stage and the players out this evening.
I am no better man thank you for inviting me here to play today. It was really nice listening to you talk about your business and the idea of purpose and profit. I feel like as an artist it's that as well. So you have like this purpose, but like I need to eat, you know. So it's a similar conversation you have about how you want to do and what you want to participate in. So yeah, really nice to be on that same thought process and way. So this next song is called Anything. Breaking the ways that we were. Oh, melody of your symphony that we used to dream about. Maybe I'll find you out there in the selflessness. Maybe you'll cry, maybe I'll cry too. Everything I was has left. Everything I was has left. Yes, you run, you have to leave your past behind. Yes, you die, you have to 100,000 times. Do believe that everything and anything can happen. 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 Finally something, finally someone else. I wear a disguise to conceal myself. And both of your eyes, they watch me so silently. Oh, melody of your symphony to restore my health. Yes, you run, you have to leave your past behind. Yes, you die, you have to 100,000 times. Do believe that everything and anything can happen. 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 That everything and anything can happen. Everything and anything can happen. Thank you. So I'll play one more. And I'm just thinking, I've changed my mind now. That was my nice hopeful one. So I'm trying to think of something else.
Thanks.
Okay. Mysteries at night, lights are shining bright, and if you find your way, the ghost of time will say, don't you forget me when I'm dead and gone. You'll keep dreaming till the lights turn on. When you're down, I will be your shelter. Spread love around, you'll never be alone. When you're down, I will be your shelter. So you'll never be alone. We live our lives each day. The magic helps us stay safe. And if you find your way, the ghost of time will say, don't you forget me when I'm dead and gone. You keep dreaming till the lights turn on. And when you're down, I will be your shelter. But I'm around, you'll never be alone. And when you're down, I will be yours. So you'll never, ever, ever be alone. When you're down, I will be your shelter. So you'll never, ever, ever be alone. We live our lives each day. The magic helps us